Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about quite a lot recently, and I've also been using it in my own work with myself. And that is another perspective to the Enneagram of personality theory, which is positive intelligence. So I will be sharing more with you about this new system that I've been learning about, how it connects to the Enneagram, and also what some of the differences are that I think are quite important and which we can kind of make use of in our personal development journey. So all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So I've been talking on this channel quite a lot about Jungian or MBTI, Jungian typology or MBTI, and also about Enneagram. Recently, over the last few months, I've discovered a new system called positive intelligence, also known as PQ, because I took a course done by Shrizad Chamine. He's now a coach in the United States, originally from Iran. He wrote a book, Positive Intelligence, as well. So if you're interested, I think you can find it on a lot of different websites, and also as an audiobook. And he also created a course that I took last year. I found it to be really insightful because this course has a lot of elements, or this theory has a lot of elements that are very similar to the Enneagram, but there are a few additions and tweaks to it that make it a little bit easier to be applied when it comes to working with our type and improving different aspects of our personality or dealing with some of our weaknesses, fears, and so on and so forth. So long story short, what this system claims or says is that people have two sides. Okay, this is more complex in reality, but we will simplify for the sake of conversation. There are two parts to every brain / every human being. One of them is what we call the sage in positive intelligence, whereas in the Enneagram of personality, this is known as essence. And the other part is also known as the saboteur part of ourself, or saboteur part of our brain. In other words, it can also be considered the survival part of our brain. And in the Enneagram, this is basically your type. Okay, now, the sage, or the essence, is the part of ourselves that is connected to who we really are deep down. The part that is free from self-sabotaging strategies, from overwhelming fear, from overwhelming negative emotions. It's the part of ourselves that maybe is more spiritual in a way, that is more mindful, more connected with ourselves and with the world and with the present moment, more able to create positive actions and changes in the world, more able to experience positive emotions. On the other hand, the other part, the saboteur part or the survival brain, is the part that we kind of learned earlier in our childhood as a survival strategy or mechanism, or as a set of survival strategies or mechanisms, which in our adult life can become self-sabotaging strategies or tendencies. In positive intelligence, there are 9 saboteurs, which pretty much map perfectly to the 9 Enneagram types. So for example, we have the perfectionist, which is pretty much Enneagram type 1. We have the pleaser, which is pretty much Enneagram type 2. We have the hyperachiever, which is pretty much type 3. The victim, which corresponds with type 4. The hyper-rational, which corresponds to type 5. The hypervigilant, which is the equivalent of type 6, the restless, which corresponds with type 7, the controller, which corresponds with type 8, and the avoider, which is pretty much on the same line as Enneagram type 9. However, the system of positive intelligence adds one more saboteur to these 9. They call it the master saboteur, or the self-sabotaging strategy that all people have, and kind of the one that rules all of the other 9 saboteurs. And this is also known as the judge. The judge is that critical voice that I'm sure you recognize in your own inner world. Sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's less strong, but overall you have it. The judge is basically that part of ourselves that tell us that there's something wrong with us, that we're not good enough, is very harsh and judgmental of the self, but does the same thing to the external world, to other people or to situations. It's judgmental of others, it's critical of others, but not in a constructive way, in a destructive way. It's constantly unhappy with how things are in real life, is unable to experience gratitude and presence. It's constantly nagging and criticizing that people and things and situations are not good enough. And here it's really important to understand that not all criticism comes from the judge. The sage, or the essence, which is, let's say, the more positive side of ourselves, also is able to form negative feedback or criticism. But the negative type of feedback or criticism that comes from the sage is much more constructive. It's actually the type of criticism which inspires us to do better, inspires other people to do better. It comes from discernment, and it's empowering. After you hear this type of negative feedback that comes from the sage, you feel empowered. You feel like you know what you have to do. It's kind of like that really good friend or family member or mentor that you have, which gently gives you some constructive criticism with good intentions, aimed at helping you grow, not aimed at tearing you down and stepping all over you. However, the type of criticism that comes from the judge is criticism that is destructive. It makes you feel much worse. It doesn't empower you. It doesn't give you this inspiration to actually make things better, but rather makes you feel worse and worse and worse. And it even has a bad impact on your performance medium to long term. It might work short term, but medium long term, not so much. Now, this judge works in partnership with the other 9 saboteurs. Yeah, so the perfectionist, also known as the stickler, or the people pleaser, or the hyperachiever, and so on and so forth, which correspond with the 9 Enneagram types. And similar to the Enneagram, positive intelligence says that one of these strategies is probably the strongest. We all have access to all 9, but usually 1 or 2 of them are stronger than the others. They formed earlier in our childhood. We use them much more. We are much more familiar with them. And they come up quite a lot in our day-to-day life. And it's been a really good exercise for me to be very mindful and to notice when these kinds of saboteurs come up. As I'm a type 2 in the Enneagram, for me, the pleaser is the top saboteur. And then, because I also have 6 and 9 in my tri-type, the hypervigilant and the avoider, aka the peacemaker, are also quite strong. So these are the 3 saboteurs which I need to be mindful of in order to not let them completely throw me off track, of course together with the judge that we all have. And it's a really interesting exercise to become aware of all the situations where our minds trick us into believing the saboteurs much more than believing the other parts which come from the sage or which come from the essence. We are in sage mode or in essence mode when we use one or more of the sage's powers. And in positive intelligence, these powers are empathy, curiosity, innovation, navigation, and action. Empathy is really like the antidote to the judge, because it helps us to have compassion for ourselves and for other people. Not to find excuses for bad behavior, but to have compassion and understanding. Then we have curiosity and innovation, 2 powers which basically enable us to not have this tunnel vision, but rather to be open to learning constantly, to having our minds changed about something when we get new information or new data, to have our perspective challenged, and also to be resourceful and to come up with new ideas, new ways of dealing with several different types of situations. Then we have navigation. This is where discernment comes into play. This is about critiquing the ideas that we came up with or the information that we were provided with, using our rational mind to our benefit to be able to choose the right course of action, or at least a course of action that is worth giving a try, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have action, something really important, which is the ability to, okay, after I've thought about things, after I've learned, after I've applied navigation, now it's also time to act. It's also time to go against what my saboteurs are telling me. You're not good enough, you shouldn't do this. Or people will judge you, you shouldn't do this. Or you should please other people instead of focusing on what's really important to you. Or this horrible thing is going to happen, you shouldn't act. When we are in sage mode, it is much easier to connect to action and to create meaningful aspects in the world. Now, it's not really, let's say, realistic to assume that we can create a life where we are always in sage mode, where, we never connect to our saboteurs, because everybody will sometimes be hijacked by these self-sabotaging strategies. However, the more mindful we are, the better we become at switching from the saboteur energy and what the saboteur is telling us to a more aligned way of acting and being. I found this exercise really insightful. I practice it on myself every day, and it really helps me to not wallow and get deeper into negative thinking patterns. So if you're interested in finding out more, I really recommend checking out Shrizad's work. He has this book that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. He also has a course available on his website, positiveintelligence.com. And he also has a YouTube channel where he goes deeper into this topic. I'm not affiliated in any way with the program, so I'm just recommending these things because I believe they are really helpful resources. And I'm really grateful to what I've learned during this program. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was an insightful perspective. And by the way, I also offer life coaching sessions for those of you who are not aware, mainly focused on self-awareness and with the goal to support people in creating a life on their own terms, aligned with their vision, their values, and their personality. So if you're interested, there's a link in the description below. You can access my website and find out more about it. And I also have a newsletter where I send articles about twice a month on typology and psychology-related topics. The link for that is also in the description below. Thank you very much for being with me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you next time with another video on typology.